Welcome to the webinar for the PeopleSoft Test Framework tool hosted by TeachMe2Day, and the webinar is being delivered by Michael Ncozio, which is myself. There are a few areas in which we want to cover today, first of which is understanding what the PeopleSoft Test Framework tool is and how it can be used, an overview of the actual tool itself, running an existing PTF test, so PTF is the acronym short for PeopleSoft Test Framework, and last but not least, creating and running a brand new PeopleSoft Test Framework test. So we're going to take a look at the tool today. We're going to show how those tests can be recorded through the online PeopleSoft application. And then there's a few questions and answers I wanted to provide for you that during the live webinar were asked. So I'm going to go ahead and start out by just explaining to you a little bit about what the PeopleSoft Test Framework tool is. So it is a people tool. And the PeopleSoft Test Framework basically allows you to automate functional testing, and it enables your testers to execute more tests with greater accuracy in a shorter period of time. So it allows the user to go through their general tasks of tabbing through fields on an online application, entering the data, clicking save, or whatever type of action is necessary for those particular fields to create what we call a test script. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to also incorporate some best business practices as we go through the actual test framework tool itself. So I'm going to go ahead and log into the environment. This is our PeopleSoft Test Framework environment. And in here you can see over to the left there's a little project workspace. And in your project workspace we have a home directory. I also have two other folders that I've created out here. One being for testing of some tests that I've already created, and then the webinar folder of which I originally went through the live webinar with. So in here, a folder can be created as simple as starting out by doing a right click, create folder, and it gives you the opportunity to create a new folder, just like Windows Explorer would do. So you type in a name, you click OK. It creates the folder for you, and this represents the folder in which you would like to store your tests in. So of course you have the ability to create as many as you'd like to at that point in time, and then by which, once that yellow folder is created for you to store your tests in, it allows you to expand that folder out, and as you accumulate tests, which you can see underneath of my folder that says testing, I have 3 different tests allocated here. And then underneath each one of those tests, you are presented with a log file and then also test cases. So we'll come back and take a look at what test cases are. The log file, which has my initials associated with the subfolder underneath of it, if I expand that out, it shows these are 2 different log files for tests that I have run for this particular new test called TM2D client add. So naming conventions are just as important as they are with any other object within the PeopleSoft database. And one of the other important features about the PeopleSoft Test Framework tool is the fact that any test that you create and record is also enabled to be migrated through projects through the application designer as well. So this test is actually now a new object inside of my database server and my people tools. In addition to that, so I've named it TM2D, so that's the name of my company, client, because that's the application that I was working with, and then the action of add. So you can kind of incorporate your own best business practices, but again, consistency is definitely the key when you're thinking about naming conventions. Also being as descriptive as possible. In this case, I had a description in here. It was a new client test. So I'm going to show you what that application is. And that's part of your best business practice, obviously understanding what your application is, what needs to be tested. And in addition to what needs to be tested along the way, you also want to understand as the test should work all the way through from start to finish, you should be able to test it to the negative side as well. So you should be able to test something that should be broken. So they should work either way and get the expected results. So always a good practice to put in place. So first things first, I'm going to open up one of my tests just to show you what it looks like right now. So I'm going to double click on my add a new client, and it looks like there's a bunch of stuff all over the place in here. So I'm going to show you the very first one is, these are all individual clicks that myself or a person would do as they navigate through the PeopleSoft application itself. So they start by logging into the browser, they go through their navigation of the menu structure and get to the actual component. And then once they get to the component, you get to your search record. And your search record allows you to either click the search button, add a new value, do a partial search, whatever it may happen to be. Every action that you do and every step that you take or task to complete inside of your PeopleSoft application is going to be recorded. Now, one of the best business practices is, no matter what it is, you always want to record it, because it's easier to delete a mistake out of your test than it is to really go in and re-record it. So it's also more efficient just to grab more steps than what's necessary. You never know what you may or may not need in here. So I'm going to show you that this is an existing test, just to show you how the application works first and foremost. Your PeopleSoft Test Framework also is needs to run on Internet Explorer as well. So that's the only browser that it will hook into at this point in time. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to just run this test just so you can kind of get the idea of what it does. So you know it is a test script. This is the test script that's been recorded. This is the recognition of each one of the steps as I clicked, as I go down to the bottom. And right now I have the checkbox for the active task for the page save not active right now. So I don't want this to go ahead and save into the PeopleSoft system. So what I'm also going to do is make one more change to my test script. I am going to go in here and update display. It's going to choose TC3, which was a client that I added previously. So we'll see along the lines of how this particular test script behaves, and as it runs, you'll get to go through each one of the steps that are being performed here. I'm going to go ahead and click the execute button, which is also your run button, also can be operated by the F5 key. When I click that, you're going to see a little menu open up. It's going to also go ahead and open the browser for you. And then it's going to go ahead and log in. And once it goes ahead and logs into the application, it's going to go through and put up the menu structure with the breadcrumbs, and then go ahead and update mode TC3. It'll take a look at the various fields that we have. And as it runs through each one of these items, you'll see the mouse click on and off of the different fields. It also works with prompting functionality. About the only quirk that your PeopleSoft Test Framework scripts have an issue with are calendar features on your Internet Explorer browser. So you need to explicitly type in the actual date that's there. All right, so you're going to see a bunch of red flags, and with all other items out there in PeopleSoft, red means no good. So in this case, our test has failed. And as our test fails, as we start up here at the very top, gives us our date and time stamp of when the actual test was started to use. It gives us a message on the OK, and it logs a screenshot every time it will encounter an error. So we'll take a look at the log screenshot. And in this case, it said, oh, I had an issue before I even started. And that was our welcome to the Internet Explorer 8. And again, this was not recorded in the original test. So there are a couple of other things that you want to keep in mind is whatever steps that you have taken to originally record the test, you need to also make sure that those are exactly simulated in here. So this is something I wanted to show you also with the screenshot that we had as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close that image. I'm actually going to go ahead and close the log file in here and come back over to our home PTF project output here. And I'm going to expand out that test that we just ran. And this is the log file that we were just looking at. And notice it gives you a date and time stamp. It gives you the person that ran it, and then also the time. And of course, there's our little red flag. This test here was a test that ran successfully. So I'm going to go ahead and open this log file up. And in here, this is what it looks like when something functions properly within the PeopleSoft system. Okay, so we get a green, no red flags in here. The cream color or off-white color that you're looking at, or possibly yellow, depending upon what color you're seeing on your screen right now, these are just informational. So anytime you see this color of a flag, it's okay. It's just a matter of you don't want to see red unless you truly are intending the test to actually fail out there. So we're going to go back in. I'm going to make a quick correction to this. And I'm going to go in the action of add this time. So we're going to add a brand new client, and I'm going to name this client TC5. I don't think I used TC4, but I'm not positive. So I'm going to go ahead and change this one to 5, and we'll give this little guy same thing here. So all I'm doing is changing the values that I want it to enter into the actual data and populate for me. So my contract date, also in here, we'll put today's date, so 03/25 of 2015. I am going to allow it to save this time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my step 4 page save back on, and then I'm going to go ahead and save my test. Once I go ahead and save my test, and again, this is reusing what you already have. So this is the beneficial part to the PeopleSoft Test Framework. You can just tweak the test as you go through to change a little bit about the data in order to rerun the tests as many times as what you need to, or change up the tests as many times as what you need to. So I've gone ahead and saved, and now we're going to go ahead and rerun. Once I go ahead and rerun, I've gotten rid of that PeopleSoft 8 window, or the Internet Explorer window that originally popped up there. It's going to go ahead and log us back into the PeopleSoft system again. And go through the menu navigation. Now it's going to go in the action of add, enter our TC5. So this is all the information that I was originally inputting in. It's going to select our client type, the contract date. Again, you notice it did not click the calendar feature. It just is a quirk of the PeopleSoft Test Framework. It does not function properly. And it needs an explicit date typed in the contract date or any calendar function. And then once it enters the postal code, it should be able to save, and you see the save icon in the upper right-hand corner. And when the test is done, it takes you right back into the PeopleSoft Test Framework tool itself and shows you that it has in fact passed. So that's running an existing PeopleSoft Test Framework test. I'm going to go ahead and close, and then I'm going to close up this test right here, and we're going to create a brand new one. So I'm going to start by going into the recorded webinar, which is the session we're in currently. I'm going to do a right click, and I'm going to say create test. And the first thing that it's going to do, I always put a description in here. And we're going to put creating a new client. And I'm going to go ahead and save. Following our naming convention. And we'll click OK there. All right, so I'm going to show you how that previous test was actually recorded. So this is what a blank test looks like once you initially create it. And then you have a little red button up here at the very top, which says show me the test recorder. So once I go ahead and click that, I get a little test recorder strip up here, and all of my little toolbar buttons are currently grayed out because I have not started the test as of just yet. But when I click home, because of all of the configuration that has been set up for the PeopleSoft Test Framework, so when you initially, PeopleSoft Test Framework does come with your PeopleSoft applications. It's just an executable that's buried a little bit in the infrastructure, the file structure, I should say, of installing PeopleSoft. Once you actually install it and you stick a little icon on your desktop, there is some configuration you need to do to ensure that your PeopleSoft Test Framework tool is hooking into the correct browser as well as instance of your PeopleSoft database. And then also inside of your PeopleSoft application, there's some security and some configuration you need to do in order to set that up. So we have a 3-day class that actually covers all of those pieces about from installation to configuration to being able to record your tests, and best business practices encompassed with that. Also, just as a couple words of wisdom, I always say assertively record every test script or test movement from the test. Even if you don't think it might be necessary, as I said before, it's much easier to delete something out if you don't need it than it is to go back and try and re-record it. Now, there's also a lot of additional features and functions that you can put in here. So there's you can get very complex with your tests. There's an unlimited amount of syntax basically that you can use in here. We do teach you quite a bit of it inside of the 3-day class that we have at TeachMe2Day. However, we're going to cover just a few more basics here in our webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and click the home button. And the first thing that's going to do is it's going to go ahead and place the hook into my PeopleSoft application. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that is already set up. And then you're going to see that there's a big kind of an orangish red button that appears on my test recorder. When I click that, that's what's going to tell me I am ready for my test to start being recorded. You're going to also see all of these little toolbar buttons are going to be highlighted immediately so that I can go ahead and use them during the test recording. In addition to that, over here, there's a little yellow menu in here, and this is what the recognition is seeing as it's recording each one of your steps for your test itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click record. And once I go ahead and click record, the little green light comes on and it says I'm ready for action. So I'm going to click in my password, type in my password, click sign in. And once I go ahead and sign in properly, oh, my caps lock is on, won't help. There we go. Once I go ahead and sign in, and obviously that's going to cause a little bit of an extra step to be recorded, so we'll get to see that. I'm going to click on main menu, go to my TM2D core class applications, TeachMe2Day clients, and then once I go to my TeachMe2Day clients, I'm going to go ahead and pull up that TC5. So we're going to update an existing customer ID. I'm going to click search. That's going to take me right into my TC5. I'm going to go ahead and change my client type to higher education. Once I change that to higher education, I'm going to say, well, you know, they also have a suite number now. So I can Suite 200, so I can go ahead and put their street line address in of Suite 200. And then let's say they moved from Florida to Georgia, and their new postal code is 11111. Now, I'm not going to save this because if I did, it's going to come back in and try and replicate the same thing that I did and give us another fail just like our first test did. So I'm not going to click the save button. So I'm just going to go ahead and end our test. Now, the other thing with, I'm going to close my recorder and it'll bring us back in here. The other thing with not clicking the save button in here is that you will not get a pass, a green flag when it's done, because it didn't essentially do a commit to the database. It did complete the test, but there was nothing that committed to the database at that point. So what we're going to do is take a look here at the very top, and first things first, you can see here this is where I had to enter my password and submit button twice. So we're going to just correct this all out and out to begin with. And this is also where you can incorporate some more efficiencies into your test. So rather than having to go through the start menu every single time and type in your ID and password and click the submit button, each one of the types of tasks or actions, a type of an action that you can do in here, there are quite a few. I'll just scroll through them here. Each one of those also has its own set of actions. So in here, I'm going to leave this as browser, but instead of it just saying start, which means prepare the start screen, I want it to start and automatically log in with the credentials that I've already set up within the PeopleSoft Test Framework. So again, this is also something that you learn through the class, and it's just one of the actions, one of the many actions that are valid for the type of action, which is a browser action. So in here, I'm just going to do start and login. And then what I can do, I can either choose to inactivate these steps because I no longer need them all the way down to the submit, or I can just go ahead and delete them all. Oops. I can go ahead and delete them all and shorten my test up a bit so that way I can see everything that I'm looking at here. And once I go ahead and shorten up my test, also, I don't really need to go through the menu actions anymore. I know that they work, so I don't need to have them active. Just jump me right into the screen. I want you to go in and update TC5. So you can see here, this is my name of my menu and my component. This is the name of the actual text for my client table, and the customer ID that I happen to be updating is TC5. I clicked the OK button, which was the prompt that said select this unique key of TC5. And then once I went ahead and did that, the first thing that I went to on my page was selecting that client for higher education. So that was my client type. I did also make an update to their street address, which was Suite 200. I did in fact not save, but I did do the lookup, and I went ahead and selected the Georgia item from the list. And then last but not least, I went ahead and updated the client table for the zip code, which was the 11111. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and save my test because we have not done that yet. And the last thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and rerun. So I'm going to go ahead and let that little one go. And it's going to go ahead and bypass my browser. It's going to go in the English language. So notice it's going through the motions, but it's actually logging in based upon the credentials I set up with the system, bypassing the menu structure, so saving us some time, changing the radio button to higher education, making our selection, and then changing our postal code. So in here, notice no pass, no fail, just informational items, and it was able to go ahead and run through each one of the steps that were identified through the entire test. So here are your execution options. These are the testing information about the test, the system information of how it was logging into with the credentials behind the scenes. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the log file. So now if we come back to the home directory, underneath of this, we should have one login here, which we do. It was executed at 10:05 in the morning, and our date of 3/25 of 2015, and the user ID I logged in with was VP1. So one more thing that I'll show you in here about the PeopleSoft Test Framework is that was a test that we created, and now you can also create test cases. So once you initially have a test recorded, now you can make variations of that by creating certain test cases. So to do that, I'm going to come over here, and it says test case save as. So the original is always the default, and that's where you see the name with the 1 and the 2 brackets. So right now it will always create a default for you. So I'm going to go ahead and do another one. This is going to create test case number 2. And we're going to new test. We'll do TC6 and click OK. All right, so there's our new test case, and you can always put a description in here. Client TC6, so our test case 6. And once I go ahead and do my client TC6, I can come in here and make as many changes as necessary. So first and foremost, we actually don't have a TC6 in here. So we would need to go ahead and change this to an add. Make sure that we're changing our TC5 to TC6. And this test case should actually fail because I have not selected each one of the necessary fields in order to create my entire test case. So one of those fields being the street one. So one of the questions that we got during the webinar was, what happens if I do forget a step? I don't want to go back and re-record it, but can I insert my own? The answer to that question is yes. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to do a right click and I'm going to copy this step. And I'm going to do a right click and insert step. And in here, let's paste. Oh, we can get rid of our extra. There we go. Let's try that one more time. There we go. And then delete step. Yes. So now we have two of the same, and we want to first and foremost change this to give them a street address, and then this is actually street 1. So not too far from the other value of street 2 in here. So we're going to go ahead and put in our street 1, street 2. We have our customer type, we have our customer ID. I think description may also have been a value that we needed to place in here too, but we'll see as we run the test. And then a lot of times those are some of the adjustments that you need to make, but the point being is showing you that the test scripts are very easy to update, insert rows, delete rows, update the data as necessary. And again, this happens to be a test case. So I'm going to go ahead and just save this and show you the PTF. And every time that you create a test case for your actual test that you're creating out there, you'll have your test, which you're looking at here at this point. Or your test case, excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, but sorry, we're going to pull up that one. I do expect that this one will fail because I do believe that description is also a required field in here, so we'll see how this one works. I'm going to go ahead and run. It should log in for us. And as the test is running, it's going to do the navigation and jump us right to the page. Go to the action of add. And description is also a required field. And the one good thing about this is we also didn't select a country, so trying to select a state without a country also is proving validation as far as our application is concerned, so that's a good thing. So you can see in here our test did in fact fail, and that's because we tried to select one field without having the other validated first. And here it's going to log our screenshot. So if I go ahead and double click, it shows us right here. There's no matching values found for the lookup state because of the fact you have to select country first. And that's a very well-known validation point within PeopleSoft. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. So we know that there's a few things we would need to correct in our test script in order for this to run correctly out there within our PeopleSoft system. So again, that was an example of running a brand new test script that we created from scratch, creating a test case out of an existing test script. And last but not least, we also ran one that finished successfully, which was adding a new client. So again, just keeping in mind things to remember. Make sure that you do record every single one of those steps explicitly, even grabbing more than what you feel is necessary, because you never know what you may or may not need for the test script. In the end result, you may change your mind and say, I want less fields, but it's always easier to delete than it is to go back and try and re-record those. Inserting steps is also a valid action. And you will find that in our 3-day class, you have the use of a lot of different syntax. You have the availability to use variables in here. So there's a lot of different setup that you can do, and your tests can become very, very complex. So it is a great tool to use. One more thing that I will show you is when I was in the webinar, originally I had a question and someone had said, how do you know the actual values or the fields that you're looking at on your PeopleSoft application? So I'm going to go ahead back in here, and I'm going to do one more test just so you can kind of see what they mean by validating a field. We'll just do this. We'll name it client this time. I'm going to go ahead and the menu that you want to watch up here is the bright yellow menu, and there's a little hand with a question mark, and it says move over the object to actually get the properties. So the properties are the different types of objects that you can encounter out there, and then for each one of those object types, you also have a set of actions that are applicable for that once you choose the type. So that's one of the pieces that I wanted to show you in here. So I'm going to go ahead and click record, have it launch my PeopleSoft application, and I'm going to go ahead and click record. And again, the main reason for us doing this is to show you the object recognition and how it sees that inside of PeopleSoft. So we're going to go right back to the same application. Stay consistent. I'm going to click search, and this time we'll open an existing one. So now if I wanted to see what type of a field, maybe I wanted to change this to higher education, all I need to do is left click, grab that little question mark, and up here you can see the object type, label, text, and higher education. So if I wanted to see a different field, let's say that I was going into the country field. Let's grab the question mark again and go into the country field. And in here, you can see the object type. The actual value associated with it currently is USA. So, and it also gives you the name of the actual object up here as well. So you can also do validation factors along with the actual data that you're entering into each one of your test cases as well. So again, that was one of the questions that were asked during the webinar, is how can you validate some of the objects and the object types as well as the data as you're recording your tests. And you can also see in here, this would be a separate test step that I have. So there's a little green checkbox that says verify. So if I wanted to verify specifically that this field said add mechanics in it, there's my text verify. It's the TM2 client table, the Desker field, and I have my ADMECH in here as well. So that's just one of the features that you have as you're recording your tests. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And then once we come in here, here is our verify step with our text verify, and then the description short field, which was ADMECH. So there's a number of different features and functions that you can use with your test scripts. I just wanted to point a few of those out today. And if you have any questions, I would be very, very happy to answer those questions. Again, my name is Michael Ncozio. I'm with TeachMe2Day, and you can send us questions to teach, T-E-A-C-H, at teachme2day.com. And you can also visit our website, teachme2day.com. That is a number 2, not spelled out 2, to get to our website. And we'll also have all of our future webinars recorded and posted to our website as well. Have a fantastic day.